everybody. Welcome to Insight Radio. I'm your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. How are you today? You know, a lot of the country is opening up. I'm feeling a lot of flow coming in. A lot of breathing out as people are getting out in the spring. Here in Montana, we finally got some rain coming in, just April showers into May. And so our May time has been really quite beautiful. Lots of mosquitoes early this year, so I think we're going to be having quite a bit of heat and moisture. That's going to be a heat and moisture year for sure. But anyway, it's so great to be with you. And today I'm going to launch right into our topic because it's a big one and I'm excited about it. I've been thinking about it a lot. And it's actually a really profound conversation to have. And I think it's time we all have it. It's one of those surreal conversations. You have to ask yourself, wow, how far along in the virtual scope of things have we actually placed the tentacles of our emotional need? Now think about this. You know, a lot of us are on social media for different reasons. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, lots of different providers out there. Of course, for really kind of mid-30-somethings and up, that's where you see a lot of that demographic on Facebook. Then you've got, of course, TikTok is a much younger demographic overall with kids making videos. My daughter loves TikTok. She does all kinds of cool stuff on there. And then you've got Twitter, which is pretty much what I like to call the bitter news feed of the world. People are just kind of weighing in there with their cryptic little 240-character little bits. And periodically I'll post something on Twitter, just a thought or a message or something. It's short, whatever. And Instagram, which is pictures. And Instagram, even though I don't know much about all the fancy fun stuff you can do with Instagram, I really enjoy Instagram because it's all visuals. And the visual aspect of it really does walk in I would say, the image of the time frame of the feminine. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about there, you know, a lot of what we're dealing with in this new time frame is transitioning from masculine ways of communicating messages and ideals back to the feminine. And you may or may not know this. However, the masculine is really the basis from which we grew written language. That was not a feminine attribute. That's, of course, a prefrontal cortex issue. Not to say women can't read, people, come on. Yet it's about where we place those energies and where our brain goes when we process those energies. Before writing, every history was oral and it was sung and it was through photos or pictures or before that paintings and drawings and before that cave paintings. And that was during the feminine time frame that we really did enjoy a lot of what we see now as cave paintings and pictures and whatnot. So what am I talking about today? Well, I'm talking about the different energies and how it's manifesting our need to communicate in the world and what that means for us at this time. Because social media has become far more than just a little something to dink around on. Back in the days of the early 2000s, there was MySpace and Friendster. Do you remember those? And I was on MySpace. I had my MySpace page, and you could put up your music on MySpace. And it was like for those of you that don't remember MySpace, it was like a really watered down Facebook. You didn't have near the ability to put stuff on walls, and mostly people just kind of communicated back and forth, and it just was not as complicated as Facebook is. Well, then Facebook came along, and man, that was just magical. You know, in the early 2000s, I think 2003 or 4? 2004, I want to say. It was just this big magical thing. And then Friendster tried to take off, and it kind of didn't really go anywhere because it was too much of a knockoff of Facebook at that time. But we've had these different, turnarounds, maybe is the best way to look at them, with social media. And with those turnarounds in social media, the way that we form bonds and communicate and utilize the medium of social media has dramatically changed. And today we're going to get into some fascinating concepts, many of which to do with physics. and consciousness, because there's really no difference between physics, quantum physics, and consciousness. Consciousness affects quantum physics, which is why a lot of times on this podcast, I will have guided meditations I'm doing for everybody so that we can affect the quantum field around us, because that's actually a real thing. That's not a woo-woo thing. That's an actual science thing. So today's podcast, that was kind of the big preamble. Today's podcast is all about social media and what it eats. Because as we move forward into reforming and creating this new earth and this new world that we're coming into, one of the most important things that we can really focus on is the fact that manifestation has become a cornerstone of how we create in our world. Now, gang, I'm not talking about the manifestation from the 1990s where you watch The Secret and you make a vision board. That's all very valid. I'm talking about the kind of manifestation that comes through the brain and creates an electromagnetic signature in the brain. And that electromagnetic signature then affects the quantum field on a quantum level. You know, I always say thoughts are things because they are. When we're talking about the energy of thought, we're talking about something that actually is heard and acted upon by the fabric of the freaking universe, okay? So social media, is it alive? And if so, what does it eat? Well, initially, social media was just a way that we all hooked up and talked to each other. Yet now, we're going to use Facebook as an example. Facebook has people on it from all over the planet. I mean, if people can get internet, they're on Facebook. So we've basically got a planet of people who, for the most part, if they're online, are on Facebook. Now, we've got yes, people say, but the younger generations aren't. Well, that's true. But we've got tons of people who are, gang, billions of people on Facebook. All right. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because what started out as just a mail service and a picture service, a picture exchange service with social media, what started out as that has really turned into a pretty big, major exercise in creating its own consciousness. Now, what the heck am I talking about? I'm not saying we're necessarily stitching an arm and an eyeball onto Facebook like Frankenstein's monster, but in a way we are. We are all stitching a part of our consciousness to this larger thing with this world. We've created a world within a world. And I'm going to pick on Facebook because it's low-hanging fruit right now. Yet the world within the world of Facebook is millions and billions of tiny little multiverses that are shaped like echo chambers, like an egg with BBs just ricocheting around in each one of these. And pretty soon one egg hits another egg and those shells crack open and all those BBs go flying, and then they crack other eggshells open and those BBs go flying, and pretty soon it's like a bingo ball collar with a ton of bingo balls flying around. But it's all these projectiles cracking open the little microcosms and micro-universes of other people and exploding something, and boom, all those BBs go out. And pretty soon, if you look at the energy in Facebook, it looks a heck of a lot like the synapses in the brain. Watch the synapses in the brain. There's an arc and a spark. One side of the synapse begins to light up, the other one starts to light up, and just like lightning, that creates a charge both from the sky and from the ground. And that charge doesn't necessarily strike from the top down. The charge creates, if you watch lightning in super, super, super slow motion, there is a piece coming down from the sky and there is a piece coming up from the ground. And they meet in the middle. And that middle portion, that actually, that's where that crack happens, is that boom, when they actually run into each other. And of course, you know, the speed of light, the speed of sound, blah, blah, blah. So what we're looking at with Facebook is we are looking at a reaction like the synapses of the brain. You know, the synapses are two little ends, and one lights up and the other lights up, and they both arc and meet in the middle, and that's how we create a thought. So when we're looking at Facebook, we are sparking over here, and then someone else is sparking over there, and then we're creating a post that's getting shared, and it meets in the middle. Then that thing becomes alive, And all the energy of everybody who's liked it, watched it, viewed it is all attached to that one post. Now, there's something very important I need to be able to communicate here today to everybody. Virtual interaction is interaction, okay? Now, I'm not saying that if you have virtual sex with somebody, it's the same as having someone's flesh on you. Yet I am telling you the energy exchanged in the virtual sphere is almost non-distinguishable from the energy that is shared when people are face to face. And when I say non-distinguishable, it is that we can track, it is trackable, the emotional energy that comes off of somebody when they receive an email or a nasty comment online. And if there are millions of people who are liking a puppy video with a cute little puppy, that feels good. And have you ever wondered why you actually want to watch the same stupid puppy and kitty video that you know has been going around the internet for like 2 years? Have you ever wondered why you watch it again? It's because you look down and there's 22.6 million likes and views or whatever on this particular video, and it's cute as heck. And when you watch that video, you not only are enjoying the funny little cute puppy or kitty, yet you are interacting. I want you to hear this. It's extremely important. You are interacting with the energies of 22 point whatever million people who watch the puppy or kitty. And most people have very favorable responses when they look at cute baby little animals. I mean, I'm sure there's probably one Ebenezer Scrooge out there bah-humbugging a kitten. However, most people are having this incredible experience, right? So what in the heck am I talking about? What I'm talking about is the fact that our reality that we think is fake in Facebook, we're like, oh, whatever, it's just on the computer. We have created an energetic consciousness within our own consciousness based upon our interaction with it. Now, how does that work? How does that work? Well, let me tell you. If you think I'm full of crap, pick up your cell phone and notice it's a touch screen. The screen is interacting with the electromagnetic frequency of your body. It's a touch screen. Your body has a mild electrical current to it. And that's how touchscreens work. They recognize that electrical current, and then they allocate that electrical current to mean something to the screen. Well, as we know, energy cannot be destroyed. It is transferred, right? So if I am touching my phone and I am scrolling through Facebook, all right, so just imagine you've got your index finger here and you're flicking up and you're scrolling and you're scrolling and you're scrolling. Well, in your mind, it's a piece of glass with a bunch of binary that's representing some images that you're scrolling past. Except for the fact that energy cannot be destroyed, it's merely transferred, okay? So all of a sudden, you are immersing yourself in this form of exchanging ideas and consciousness that is literally shared by touch by billions of people, all right? That is like licking 3 billion doorknobs. I'll say it again. That is like licking 3 billion doorknobs. You are sharing energy in that space. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you're on social media and you can just feel so uplifted? You're reading beautiful comments and people are so sweet and you'll feel your heart chakra just open right up. Isn't that strange? I mean, have you ever really had that much of a response to something when you're reading a novel? I mean, maybe. Yeah, probably if it's a really good novel. But think about this. Let's think about reading a novel. And when we're reading a novel, obviously, yes, of course, energy is transferred. So you're picking up anything and any energy that's ever been left on that page. Absolutely. However, it is if you're reading through Kindle, that's different. But we're just talking about a book made of paper. So here you're reading your book. And you're going through and you're reading. Your mind is assimilating the words, and your mind is running into your emotional center that's being tapped by whatever the scene in the book is. Say it's a really sad scene and somebody's spouse is dying. Now, your mind is going to apply your feelings of what the heck that would feel like to lose someone, or maybe you have lost someone. So your brain is going to the place in it and pulling up a like reaction to be able to empathize with the words on the book. And it's important to remember that when we read something, that goes right in through our brain. And especially when we're interpreting something with black and white, the brain will look at it as fact, which is why even after color films came out, the newsreels that were in the old movie theaters, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, back in the day before they had TV, you would go to the movies and they would have newsreels up there. And the newsreels would be in black and white, and then your movie would come on and it would be in color and whatnot. And sometimes it was still in black and white. Well, even after we had the opportunity to have color medium in both TV and in film, a lot of the news media, and I'm trying to do little bitty bullet points because we're already 15 minutes into this podcast and we have a long way to go. However, the brain views black and white as fact. It's where the prefrontal cortex processes those contrasting colors, if you want to call them that, or lack of color and all color. So when we read something in black and white, our brain sucks it in and then it draws up the equivocating emotionality and says, okay, this is a fact. And you should be trying to relate with the fact. And that's what the brain does. And so we're reading about somebody dying in a novel and we're tishing up and we're crying and we're snotting and the whole thing. Because our brain sees it through black and white as fact and draws an equivocal response to that situation as if it were real. Okay? But our brain is doing that. Now, segueing over to Facebook. So then instead, I'm on Facebook and I'm scrolling up and down there, and a lot of Facebook, if you post, it's in black and white. If you post something on your own page and you're typing, a lot of times when you go on to read other people's comments, the comments are gray, and that's absolutely interesting. They're gray or they're blue or whatever. So the comments have a gray background, but that's still in that black and white palette. So one of the things that I think is so deeply interesting here is that we are reading on Facebook, not just from a static page, but we're reading from an electromagnetic device that is storing and transmitting all the energy that was placed into it. Let me say that again. We are reading off of an electromagnetic device all of the energy, emotionally, angrily, intellectually, love-wise, whatever, that was placed into it. And when we're touching that device, because energy is not destroyed, it's transferred, it's going into the computer, it's going into the intrawebs, it's out there doing its thing, it's combining with billions of other people, and then you're touching it. Or you're scrolling with it. It's not as bad necessarily if you're scrolling on the computer and you have a mouse, but a lot of people are using touchscreen technology. I mean, a majority of people are. I know when I was doing a lot of Facebook stuff, I was on my phone with it. So not only am I touching it, I'm holding it in my hand. So when I'm responding to anything on Facebook, not only is that post that got passed around 22.6 billion zillion times containing all of the emotional energy and energy of people who touched the screen that had their electromagnetic impulse touching the screen to move the data and the binary in order to see the picture. Okay, are you ready for this? But when I'm triggering Facebook on my phone, that's triggering a main server. Okay, so all of my app is triggering a main server. So everything I'm looking at and doing is triggering something somewhere else. Now, I want you to think about that as quantum entanglement. That's going to be my example for quantum entanglement today. What is quantum entanglement? Well, that's a fancy word for two particles. I don't even want to call them molecules, but two particles on a subatomic level that are linked together. Now, we would think of two ball bearings, right? Just sitting right next to each other. Except ball bearing A and ball bearing B, they're attached not by the hip, not by a snap, not by a buckle or a button. They are attached by an energetic field, and these are wide brushstrokes here, so that when one moves, the other moves. Now, here's the best part. We think of two BBs or two ball bearings right next to each other, and one moves and it moves the other one. Think of one mirroring the other one. They don't even have to touch, and they don't even have to be on the same table. I could have one ball bearing with me in my pocket, and the other ball bearing, depending on where the quantum universe decided to place the particle of that density in the quantum field, my matching ball bearing might be in the eyeball of somebody in Venezuela. My little particle that matches the particle that I have in my pocket, it might be on the moon. It might be at the bottom of the ocean. It might be across the street. What I'm saying is, if I move my ball bearing, that little particle, wherever it is going to move. Okay, that's called quantum entanglement. If I move it 1 inch over here, it moves 1 inch over there. If I vibrated a certain ratio here, it vibrates over there. And there's a whole bunch behind it. Please feel free to read about it again. But I'm trying to blow through this to get to the main point about what does Facebook eat and what does social media eat. So quantum entanglement is what happens because all particles are attached, okay? Like attracts like in the spiritual and the physical universe. Opposites attract in the emotional universe. We note that. So why am I bringing all this up? What the hell am I talking about today? Where am I going with all this? Well, when I'm scrolling in Facebook and I have energy that I am placing through my finger onto an electromagnetic device that is made to read, and I'm scrolling, and I hit like, okay, on my app, I'm hitting like. That is quantumly entangled, so to speak. It's not actually, but I'm using this as an example. It's triggering a server that's saying there's a like there. So reflect that like back to this person's Facebook page whenever they log on. So what I'm doing in my universe is affecting the main server over there. And again, this is a massively wide brushstroked analogy here, yet the energy mapping that I'm giving you is the simplest way I can do it. So I'm manipulating my energy on my phone, and I am mirroring what's going on that main server. And I only see and feel what's going on my phone. But that server is observing my, quote, emotionally or spiritually or energetically entangled movement, which it technically is. I'm moving my binary on this end. The server somewhere else on the cloud moves its binary. And we are acting like a quantumly entangled unit here, okay? And not only are we doing that, yet we're doing the exact same thing in two different places. And I am beaming through to that main server any of the emotions, sensations, feelings, thoughts, any of it through the energy of my touch. Now think about that. And before you think I'm absolutely off my rocker, there are studies done, and read about this too. You can read about it on pubmed.gov. Google everything. Google it, research it, look it up. That if babies are not held, they can die. You know, we need to be touched. Human touch transmits energy that then cues the physical energetic field and the nerve field of the body to release certain chemicals in the brain so we can survive. So touch is a thing, gang. It's a real thing. So here I'm touching my phone, and I'm sending all of this emotionality through my touch into the Facebook server with billions of other people. So pretty much I am breathing emotional life into a scape of thought that even though it's virtual, it is now forming the outside world. So really follow me on this one because we're going down the rabbit hole today. Why is this important? It's so important that I explain this the best that I can today. So what I've been shown, what I've been observing through just stepping back and looking at all these energies flying around, and energies with the off-world community, energies in the angels, energies with people, I've been observing that the more that we create our dependence for connection through the entangled universe called, say, Facebook. I'm going to use Facebook as the example for right now. Then that shapes how we act on the outside world. So it would be like somebody wearing an avatar into the avatar world and coming out, having been in the avatar world, and treating the other world differently because of the avatar world, or people who we're now reading about folks who do a lot of Sims games and a lot of the virtual reality games where you've got the goggles, the 360 goggles that put you in someplace. People begin behaving differently in the outside world because of this inside world that feels more real than the outside world that they've collectively created. Now, back in the day, we had all kinds of science fiction shows about this, but now I'm actually watching it happen in real time, which is why I want to talk about it today. And I'm paying attention to the time. We're 25 minutes into this podcast, and give or take some change here. And I want to make sure to stay up on this because it's super important that you understand this. And I want you to tell everybody you know this same stuff, okay? Because we are building a consciousness within a consciousness. We are building an emotional and psychological and even romantic world on these servers that you want to call Facebook. And then when something goes on in that world, we react to it outside. Now, I want you to really think about that and how messed up that is. Think about how many people lose their ever-loving minds when they're unfriended or they're blocked or something like that. This is a dang social media format, except now, because we've been touching it for years, because we've been interacting with it for years. For those of us who have had Facebook pages I've had a Facebook page apparently for over 10 years. I mean, I think I got my Facebook page, my God, clear back in like 2005. That's how long I've been on Facebook. That's crazy. Okay. And a lot of it, back before it became this massive quantumly entangled consciousness universe that's beginning to be more important in how we deal with our daily lives than getting out and watering the garden. Before it became that, it was just this really super fun way to show pictures and talk about the concert you put on and share all kinds of great things. And yes, of course, Facebook is fun to share things with. And thank God the first 3 weeks that we were all in quarantine, Facebook was wonderful. I mean, think about Facebook during that time and think about what I'm talking about. Okay, all of this love flooded out onto the Facebook ethers, and you could feel it through your phone. You could feel it through your device. People were singing, they were sharing songs, they were doing plays. People, for the first 2-3 weeks of the social isolation, were flooding our universal consciousness world within a world called Facebook, that virtual sphere, with love and connection. And it felt great. It felt like what it used to feel like in 2005 when you got on Facebook. I mean, the whole thing was just this happy place to be because we were all sharing happiness and connection, and we were all weirded out. So we were being puffy and sweet and wonderful with each other through the virtual sphere. That was coming through the touch in our fingertips. That was the energy that was being translating down into binary, that was being translated and stored in a way we don't even understand between that binary connection and shoved into the giant server in the sky. So we were pumping a bunch of love into it. And then, of course, human beings, we can only keep our bubble between the line for so long, and then we've got to get snarky. So then everybody starts fighting and getting crazy again. But this is what I've observed, is that, is social media alive? And if so, what does it eat? Well, it is alive. It is a consciousness that we have built. And for somebody like me that's been on there for over 10 years, I want you to think about the kind of energetic roots that before I really realized what was happening, I was growing from my emotional self into this mainframe in the cloud. There's a lot of Danielle Egnew in there. And if you've had your Facebook account in there for years and years and you do what most of us would do, get on and scroll through when you're bored, what's the first thing you do when you're bored in the daytime? Where do you go? Do you call a friend? Do you text somebody? Do you pet your dog? No! You pick up your phone and you go to social media. Why do you do that? Because we've all recognized that if we pick up that phone and we touch that screen, we are actually getting something back from it. Now, follow me here. So we talked about how we can transmit energy, emotions who we are, grow roots right through the phone, right through the airwaves, right into that server. We are imparting pieces of our emotional energy into this thing with billions of other people and creating a microverse that is now a main universe for most people. Now, if you don't see how A, astounding, B, terrifying, C, what an exercise and demonstration of manifestation, and D, oh my God, quantum physics must be having a heyday with this. If you don't see all those things at this point, then I have failed in explaining this concept, okay? Because I'm putting so much of me in there, but guess what? When I would go onto Facebook and I scroll, it's not just TV keeping you company. You are also pulling energy of billions of people back at you. Have you ever noticed that, again, if you read a book, it has a very different emotional attachment than if you were reading Facebook? There is an energy there that just floods, and you can physically feel the emotionality that's coming off a post. It's not just your brain mimicking the feeling of something being true or real that it read in black and white and it must respond to it. You're feeling the energy that's coming off of somebody, okay? So if we think about people who are negative online, and there's a lot of them, and just crazy and weird and passive aggressive, and people are getting a little better about that because I think we kind of went through a heyday with it and people got sick of it, yet it still happens. And if we're being snarky online or whatever, have you ever noticed how icky it actually makes you feel physically? I mean, I remember the days, I'm not a huge novel reader, but I remember the days when I used to read novels and when I had time to. And I would read certain passages and they would scare me or freak me out. I loved Stephen King. So I was continuously reading crap that just scared me to death. Not that Stephen King is crap, I'm just saying. I was reading anything that challenged me and my psyche would store it. And so I might be afraid to go downstairs at night, or when I was reading Christine, I'm afraid to get in the car by myself, or just, weird stuff like that. Yet I never felt this deep, gross, emotional after reading a novel. I might have read a disturbing passage, but again, it's intellectualized through my prefrontal cortex, so it's not hitting the heart center as much. And I might think, oh my God, that's really disturbing. And that disturbing passage might stay with me for a little bit in my mind. However, have you ever noticed that social media, if somebody says something really awful to you, you just feel like your soul has been slimed? Have you ever wondered why that's different than a book? Because an electromagnetic device has captured the feeling that that person put into that when they were just typing on their phone or their voice text or whatever, and it captured that energy and delivered it right to you instantaneously. And then as you're scrolling along and touching your screen, you are sucking it up through your fingertips in your energetic field, and you might as well have had that person standing right in front of you screaming in your face. Seriously. This is the reality of the energetic exchange through our handheld devices that we have. So we've got this thing called Facebook, and we literally have created a world by feeding it tiny tendrils of emotionality for years. And it's alive, and it seeks connection. It eats connection. It eats chaos. It eats connection, but a lot of times people choose to make connection through chaos. So when we think about what does social media eat, and the fact that it's craving constantly, post on me, post on me, post on me. God, how many times, this is nuts. How many times do you get prompts, notifications? You haven't posted on Facebook for a while. You haven't posted on Instagram. How many times, if you're signed up for notifications, have you received that? It's time for you to go post something on Facebook. Okay, now, one could argue that that's there because Facebook has advertisers and they need to make sure that people are using it. I'm sure that's one reason. But don't you think it's weird that there is this virtual thing that is nagging you to participate with it, to the point where many of us are addicted to picking up our phone and just scrolling through it. I caught myself yesterday. I had nothing to do, and I was just sitting around. It was a beautiful day, and I caught myself picking up the phone I was just standing in my kitchen, and I saw my phone sitting there. So just like I would pick a conversation with somebody who was standing there, I pick up my phone and I just mindlessly started scrolling through it. And I was probably doing that for maybe 45 seconds before I became consciously aware of what in the hell I was doing. Okay, I want you to hear that. Like I just went and just started going. Okay? And there, you can feel in the room, if you're an energy sensitive person, which I am, and I'm sure many of you are, my phone has been face down across the room, and I will feel a text come into it. I will feel a response on a Facebook page. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. I literally felt it. And then I go over there, and sure enough, my wife texted me, or my best friend texted me, or who knows. So it's important that we stop acting like this thing we've created is not real. It is real. It is full of our energies, and it is churning like a developing child with no boundaries, not understanding how it can affect other people. You know, a really bratty little kid is just freaking out, and it doesn't have a clue what's going on. It's scared. It's angry. It's kicking and screaming and spitting. That is the emotionality of Facebook, of billions of us pumping all this stuff in there. And it doesn't matter if you're pumping good or bad stuff. It is now just this cumulatively entangled thing. And we're creating a universe in there that's shaping the outside world. So what does that mean? Well, I know people who will get up and be having a perfectly good day until they get on Facebook or the social media or Twitter. And their day goes to crap in a handbasket. Because they're realizing that a dear friend, a dear family member, somebody they've never met is posting something that for whatever reason they would deem as disturbing, as crazy, as whack. And that person's heart just breaks because they're like, well, God, that's my beloved, put that person's relationship in the blank here. And they're crazy. How can you post that? And at the same time, maybe that friend, person they never met but are dear Facebook friends with, family member, whatever, might be looking at that person's post saying the exact same thing. You're crazy. How could you put that out there? Yet, if you consider that, for lack of a better way to put it, I said we weren't really going to equivocate Facebook to a Frankenstein monster, but for right now we're going to, because it's the easiest analogy I have, and we're already at 38 minutes in this podcast. So we're making a Frankenstein monster of all of our impulses, okay? Because what is social media? It's an impulse. I like this. I don't like that. I'm sharing this, F Trump, he sucks. F Nancy Pelosi, she's crazy. Our impulse. We just post. So we really are stitching together a Frankenstein monster made out of all of our impulses energetically. We are creating an impulse-driven tsunami of consciousness that constantly craves our attention. You haven't posted on Facebook for a while. Facebook misses you. You should really put something on Facebook. I mean, it's creepy when you step back and realize this thing is this avarice black hole of need and impulse. And that is what we've made into, that's what we've stored in binary. And some of it's happy and some of it's, frivolous. But overall, there is a desperation and an avarice that can never be fulfilled in our Frankenstein monster. And worse, we're deciding, after dealing with the Frankenstein monster, after touching the screen and having all of that cray-cray uploaded into our cellular structure, because that's what happens with energy, okay? Important for you to note that. Then we go and we put our phone down and we're like, people suck. People are stupid. What the hell? I can't believe this. And people across all walks of life are saying that. Somebody's sharing some overblown post about, crazy leftist terrorist groups or something. And then those people are like, oh, the left is terrible. And then somebody's sharing a white supremacist Nazi gathering going around, and somebody in there said, we're sending our support to President Trump. And then everybody's like, oh, man, the right is a bunch of sociopathic Nazis. And I mean, oh my God. Then we leave the Frankenstein monster. We leave having tea with it, and we go out in the world, and our entire vision and how we see everything is changed. Then we start treating people differently on the outside world, okay? In the real world, where there's birdies and puppies and pie and stuff, okay? We start treating people really differently out here because of the interaction with the crazy, out of control Frankenstein monster. And then we start being nasty to people on the outside world, and we begin to think everything's fallen apart. And so we act in a way that supports what we saw in this virtual sphere in the real world. And then we bring the crap out into the real world. And we're literally living in a delusion and then wanting the third dimension to reflect our delusion instead of creating a higher resonation 5 or 7 or 9D environment, which was what we had the opportunity to do with Facebook. But we didn't, because we just don't even understand our power to augment our reality. So we've created the Frankenstein monster, and it needs to eat. It needs your energy to stay alive. It needs your emotions to be what it is. It needs you to touch your screen. It needs your participation for it to be alive. And all living things, all, A-double-L, capital A-double-L, living things have a directive to stay alive. So, consciousness is real, shared consciousness is real, pooled consciousness is real, quantum entanglement, as I move my molecule here, it moves over there, is real. So as we get into this fake place and create a chaos world where everybody's divided and hates everyone else, we then take that out and create that world in real time. The tail is not just wagging the dog in this case. The tail is creating the whole universe we're deciding to operate in for billions of people. Now, it's important I got all that out there because I very recently posted on Facebook that after I realized the nature of this avariceness of this medium and what's going on and how it's this never-ending drain and the energy I can feel through my device when I'm on Facebook, it doesn't feel like it felt in 2004, 5, 2010, not even 2016. This is something different. And quite honestly, I no longer feel like giving that Frankenstein monster my energy through that binary interaction. And I am not willing to pick up just the glugh that's coming through Facebook when I surf through it. Now, it's not like I have terrible friends. It's not like people are attacking me on my pages. I mean, none of that's happening. I've got really nice friends. It's that I can't help but sit there and feel all of the meh that's in there because everybody's going there, dumping their boredom, dumping their, I don't know what's going on, their malaise. Everybody's there constantly plugged in. Now, there are other ways we can be plugged into each other that are far more productive, that don't involve immediate binary impulse, that are not feeding a Frankenstein monster literally made up of our most baseline impulses. There is a shared billions of powered consciousness in Facebook that, for the most part, is fueled by impulse, boredom, and loneliness. And I mean, obviously, I post or have posted, fun little pictures and all kinds of other things and road angel stuff and whatnot. People use it as like a bulletin board also. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how this thing has grown and what it is, and how it's now beginning to shape our outside world. So I recently made a decision because I just would get off Facebook, even with my lovely friends and good people, and I just felt gross. I felt gross to the core of my being. It was just, ugh. And not only did I feel gross, but I recognized that there's a lot of people on Facebook that do not make a connection that this collective living energy that we've created out there, this chaos energy, this desperation energy, it's like a little child constantly having a tantrum and wanting attention energy. We're not recognizing how much that's impacting our psyches or our energy levels, especially when we touch these screens. And it's like an energy toxin, and that's actually a thing. So I recognized that this was no longer serving me in my work. I would go on to Facebook to post messages from the angels or post interesting perspectives of future events, or just share look at the new guitar I bought, blah, here's a cute picture of my dog, here's my gorgeous wife, here's my awesome daughter. But a lot of it has been work related for me on Facebook. And I have got a couple of Facebook pages, and one of them has 15,000 some odd people, and another one has 1,000. And my profile, my regular one, is like close to 5,000 people. And so I'm regularly interacting with a lot of folks. And even if I'm not talking to every single one of those people, the fact that I'm hooked up to almost 5,000 people means I am sharing in that collective energetic experience with all of them every time I scroll down my feed, because they are the ones who are hooked to me. So I want to get this out there because it's important that we understand, what are you putting out on the airwaves? What are you putting into Facebook? Is it serving you or is it not? Because I've recently made this decision. I'm leaving my pages up, but I'm going to be there. I'm not going to be there. Not unless it's a super special occasion, but I'm just not going to be there. I have a media assistant. She's wonderful. If I have memes, she can put them up. She can share this link to this podcast. I'm going to be on Instagram. I'll tell you that. I enjoy Instagram because it's the feminine. It's pictures. People are just sharing puffy thoughts and, kind things. I have yet to find something on Instagram that's a raging, angry message. It's not the platform for it. Whereas Facebook is so text heavy that I will write and write and write on Facebook like a blog, and so will other people. So I have made the decision that because I'm noting a grand energetic imbalance with how we deal with this Frankenstein monster, how it's now it's a fake world that we're allowing to color the outside world, how we see individuals in our lives, what we actually believe the coronavirus to be, or people are so steeped in, oh God, the conspiracy right now. It's like insane. The world that we should be interfacing to and connecting to and Bluetoothing to is Earth and the trees and the water and the skies and the animals and the wind and each other. We can send profound messages through the Earth and through that same quantum sphere and not have everybody shoving billions of their emotions through our fingertips every time we scroll, because, using the mental image of the quantumly entangled particles, I'm moving over here and the cloud's moving over there, and I'm feeling everything the cloud's feeling and the cloud's feeling everything that I'm feeling. You talk about the ultimate hive mind. Welcome to Facebook. We are the Borg. Remember that? Yeah, for those of us that were big Trekkies and still are. Resistance is futile. Remember that? God, that used to just scare the crap out of me. I'd be watching that and I'm like, who are these crazy people with like a saw for a hand and a corkscrew for an eye, and they ride around in a cube? Oh my God. Well, that's kind of what Facebook looks like on the inside, if you look at the energy of it. Little hacked up pieces of human beings stitched together with weaponry and wires, having to be a hive mind, having to have group likes in order to feel good about our consciousness. And I have disabled every notification. And here's an interesting thing. I disable my notifications. Depending on the update I get from Apple, I have an iPhone. Sometimes it turns my notifications on. And sometimes it doesn't. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is that completely accidental? Or the more I'm pouring my guts into this thing that I'm touching, the world is uploading itself to me also in a hyper-focused way through my eyes, through my prefrontal cortex, as well as my fingertips. Now, that could be considered inundation. That could be considered brainwashing if you really think about it, except for the fact that I'm the one participating, so okay, whatever. But I'm just saying, think about it. This is really different than if I go out and I sit under a tree and I open my heart chakra and I breathe the air and I feel the rocks and I feel the earth. You will feel nothing but ultimate love, acceptance, kindness, opportunity, grace, and love. And I will feel almost 8 billion of my other fellow humans out there. And I will only feel the parts of them that are on that same wavelength. Every once in a while as an empath, absolutely, I'm knocked over by a tsunami of garbage. And my poor wife, my God, I feel so bad for her. I will be in the middle of a perfectly fine day. Here comes this tsunami of energy through the ethers. And I'm just getting quieter and quieter and quieter. And then I might just be bawling in the corner somewhere. And she's looking at me like, oh, having a hard day. And I'll be like, yeah, it's okay. It'll pass. I don't know. Because, hey, we all live in this environment and we get impacted by different things. However, the way that the information is sculpted and angled and broken down in electromagnetic impulses for your brain, your eyes, your psyche, and your physical sense, your aura, your physical fingertips, the electromagnetic impulses through your fingertips up through your nerve factions, the way that all works together is psychotically brilliant, if you think about it. If I am a sociopath and I'm trying to convince you of something, I need you on a touch screen. Now, this has nothing to do with conspiracy. Touchscreens were designed from beautiful, amazing people who dreamed of a future that was so magical. That's where these things came from. And then, psychotic, sociopathic asshats get a hold of all of that and begin to understand how it can become a control mechanism until we figure out what it is. Now, I'm not saying if you're on Facebook, you're being controlled, okay? Please understand. Yet, please also understand that if you're on Facebook, you are no longer autonomously just cruising. You have just Bluetoothed with billions of other people. And you are going through the mainframe overall of fear, loneliness, desperation, avarice, a lot of times anger, people feeling not heard, people feeling upset about world events. You are hooking up your heart chakra and your mind to an actual Frankenstein monster that is freaking conscious, that is constantly raging for more attention and demands we touch it through our phone. Yeah. So why did I get into all this today? Well, I decided that I'm not going to be on Facebook. I'm not taking my profiles down. I'm not going to do that. They're still there because I can use them to distribute information and actually pass it off to my social media assistant. And she's not as sensitive to that stuff as I am, so she can just post it out there. Yet, I've stayed on Facebook as long as I've had because I love people that are there. And I've had people literally say to me, Danielle Egnew, please do not get off Facebook because you're one of the only things that keeps me going on Facebook. You're one of the only sane voices left on Facebook. Maybe in their circle. I don't know. And so, of course, I mean, I love everybody, and I'm not suggesting I'm the savior of the world. I'm not. I'm not even suggesting I'm an influencer. I think there are some people who uptake what I have to say, and some people might have an ear for a message I'm putting out. I don't think I'm, this beacon in the dark or anything like that. God. However, I've stayed in there a lot longer than I wanted to because I've been observing this the last year. Because I felt like it was doing people a service in some way, because people were asking me to stay. Not that I think I'm all that special. It's just I was asked to stay. Well, then all of a sudden it hits me like a ton of bricks as I've gone through all these spiritual transition through our COVID time frame, through looking inside of ourselves and really needing to decide what works for us and what doesn't. And I realized that if I'm staying there in my mind because I was trying to make sure that people knew there was a safe side of the pool to swim in, I guess, maybe. I don't know. That, here's this piranha-soaked pool that we're all in. And for some reason, me being in the pool would help with the piranhas, but it just hit me like a ton of bricks. If I want to get people out of the pool where the piranhas are chewing their foundation, their feet down to nubbins, down to the bone, so no more tendons can hold them up and they collapse into the water and then all the piranhas get them. If I want people to come out of that environment so the piranhas don't get them, so this monster that I personally have been feeding with energetic energy since the early 2000s and just now have realized what the hell we've built. God, maybe I'm a little slow. But if I'm trying to get people out of the piranha pool, it's probably not the best idea to wade out to the middle of the piranha pool and say, hey, everybody, join me out here and we'll share good messages until all of our ankles are chewed off. That's really inane. And it hit me like a ton of bricks what this thing was, how we feed it, how it affects us, and how it's changing, how this virtual world that means nothing except for to store our oftentimes worst impulses. How it's changing our outside world because it's changing our mind, because it's changing our chemistry as we interact with it. Are you hearing me here? Now I know it sounds nuts, doesn't it? It sounds like every really weird science fiction movie you've ever watched from 1970 to about 1993. But it's going on. So I made the decision that I am not going to be on Facebook personally, not unless there's something super important to be said, which I'm not even really sure that would be the place to say it anymore. Because if you'll notice with Facebook too, they've got these algorithms that they've locked in there, and you pretty much can't really get out a message unless you pay for it, which is weird. I remember in the old days in Facebook, God, you could literally have something passed around and it would have 3,000 views in like 24 hours because people were so excited to pass videos and talk and whatever. And the Facebook powers that be have limited that and throttled that so you pay for it. Okay, fine. Everybody's got to make a buck. I get that. Yet it's an illusion. I'll just use me as examples for people saying, Danielle, please stay on Facebook. We love what you have to say. And that makes me feel so good, you guys. And I love all of you. And I want us all to play in the sun together. It's just that it's not in the fake virtual world. That's not where we're supposed to build everything. That's fine if we want to communicate or text or, post a picture of your dog. I'm like classic with my Pomeranians. Do that. But please understand that it is eating a part of you. For real. It is quantumly entangling you in a consciousness of chaos, avarice, desperation, and this feed me, Seymour, feed me all night long, just starving energy that never can get enough. Please understand that. So to use me as an example, I'm leaving my Facebook profiles up. My media assistant can pass on things that I think would be helpful. Yet all of a sudden I recognize, no, I am not going to go back there and do that. And there may come a time when I decide not to have any profiles in there. Because I, for the first time, at the very, very beginning part of May of 2020, I, for the first time, felt in our social media consciousness, and it is a shared consciousness in there, gang. It is, okay? For the first time, I felt a tip. and I felt a tip in a yucky direction. And it's kind of like, have you ever been out partying at your favorite bar? And it gets to that point just past midnight, heading into 1 a.m., and things just start getting weird. You know what I'm talking about? I used to go, when I lived in LA, you never wanted to be on Hollywood Boulevard, honest to God, after 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. Well, maybe not even 10 a.m. But after 10 p.m., it got really weird. So you didn't want to be there. And midnight, by the time you got to midnight, it was a totally different strip. And it was just dark and nasty and just icky with a lot of heaviness. And the spiritual properties of every broken heart and every lost opportunity and every bit of unsatiated avarice would just erupt through the cracks on Hollywood Boulevard closer you got to midnight. And then you were just beaten feet out of there to get back to the valley or anywhere else to get off of that awful feeling that was suppressed all day long by tourists and, hey, I'm in Hollywood, woo! But then what was left behind was just this grossness. So I'm telling you all of this because I have really identified that if we're going to connect with one another in this earth and make a great big difference, we got to do it outside of social media. Now, how does that even work? We've got to be able to get into small groups in our neighborhoods with our families. Sometimes our family is a family of choice, not our blood family. Sometimes it's both. And getting together and creating communion and community and making a difference in the real world. This was the message of the COVID virus, one of the many, is that we can actually feel each other and telepathically communicate. We don't need a stupid-ass phone for that. We really don't. But that's what we're used to. Before the telegraph was invented, people would know. Settlers who were clear out into the middle of the country would just all of a sudden know when one of their loved ones on the East Coast died. Why would they know? Because all of our particles are quantumly entangled with all the other particles. And as those particles moved, they moved our particles. You are so much more aware than you possibly can get your brain around. You're a very sensitive psychic and spiritual and scientific instrument. Like a seismograph on steroids. I mean, you are so sensitive. And we've numbed ourselves by inundating ourselves with electromagnetic devices that we touch. I mean, and I'm not saying it's all bad. I mean, obviously you're listening to me on a data file. This is an MP3. Yet I'm also putting every bit of love and compassion and hope into this binary broadcast. So when you listen back to it, you are unwrapping everything I put into it energetically. It's like, you know, those old gag gifts that you would open the box from Spencer's Gifts and a bunch of snakes that were basically just springs covered in leopard print socks, and they'd spring out of a box everywhere. I want you to unpack this file and have that much mind-boggling expansion spring out at you, because that's the nature of embedding energy in an electronic medium and in an electromagnetic medium especially. So we can communicate with each other through the heart, telepathically. Start with a group that you really know and trust, and start with just sitting in a circle with everybody and just reacquaint your body with how your body feels to get into that universal sense of connection with other living beings of your choice, and the ground and the earth, and begin to identify the feelings coming at you across the circle, say from a brother or a best friend, and just have that person send you love for about a minute and just feel it in your body. Where does it hit you? Just like you know to look at your upper right-hand corner of Facebook to see if you have any messages. Where does it hit you in your body? Do you look at the heart chakra? Do you feel the third eye? Where is it hitting you? And then you have the opportunity to turn around and send someone else love, and they can figure out what your individual signature feels like. Go feel your trees, feel your dogs. Because let me tell you, and this is a build up for my next podcast right here. This is my cliffhanger, people. This quantum field transfers not just thought, but it transfers emotion more than anything. And the beast that we've created, the Frankenstein monster of consciousness that we've created that is, say, Facebook in this instance, it's too heavy for the supports. It's breaking through the floorboards, and it's going to end up looking like a sinkhole. It's going to break right through, and everybody that's totally dedicated to it is going to go 500 meters down to the bottom of the sinkhole, and that'll be it. And I don't want to be part of that. It's going to be icky. It's already icky, and it's the floor is already cracking, and it's starting right now. So I'm just stepping out of that. And why is this important? Well, for those of you that have been following the work that I put out there and following my work with Offworlders, which I don't talk a whole lot about, just because up to this point, unfortunately, a lot of the UFO community has been kind of commandeered by a lot of folks who treat it like a religion. And I'm sorry, but worshiping Offworlders is not my gig. And so I don't really get that. I wouldn't want to put that on anybody. And so I interface with Offworlders all the time. I talk with them all the time. I send messages out to space and they pop up right over my house all the time. And just recently, I watched a phenomenal film. And here's my big cliffhanger for you. And that film, and here's a little bit of investigative work if you want to do this between the next podcast and now. This film is called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And it's kind of third in a series by Dr. Stephen Greer, who's more than a ufologist. He's a translator for these off-world races, and he translates to presidents, and he translates to generals, and he deals with off-worlders, and he tells people how they can actually make a difference in the world and contact these ETs. And he finally, in Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, put out there, thank God, I was so grateful. I've been talking about this for 15 years, and he had the right way to deliver the message. And he did a movie called Sirius, Sirius, as in the star, the binary star, and a film called Unacknowledged, and this is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. So you can watch them all, or you can watch Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I recommend them all. And he says that, he explains that all of our off-world beings out there communicate with each other through thought, through bending space-time with consciousness and being aware of where they want to be. And yeah, they do have mechanics and they do have spaceships and all these things. Yet I've talked about that on podcasts too, about how these ships are almost biological in nature. They aren't, but they are. They interface. They're able to interface and withstand quantum mechanics and thought. And so you have to watch this movie, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and Dr. Stephen Greer will get into this a little more. Yet it's literally how we can communicate not only with each other through this quantum field without having to go to Facebook, but with beings who are so enlightened that they can feel our resonance through the quantum field, and they kind of feel a pure heart, to put it just flat out. They feel a pure heart. They wish that they could play with us and share. But we keep ourselves at the bottom of the sinkhole in this crappy vibration, feeding a false virtual world, and then try to come out and create our actual planet in the image of the monster that we've stitched together out of our worst avarice, our worst desperation, and our worst loneliness. Yeah, this is kind of what hit me in the middle of the night. Welcome to my world. So anyway, watch Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And I believe you can rent it through Amazon or Vudu. Somebody said it was on YouTube, but I'm a filmmaker myself. And I know how much time and energy and money goes into producing a film. And I personally have no problem paying $3.99 to rent a film. If you honestly can't, I think you can find it on YouTube. However, I really try to give back to our content creators because they've got to pay people to make those films. So I am cognitive of that. Yet know this. every single thought that you have is felt by everyone. And when we jack it up and we run electricity through it and we put cell towers through it, it is alive with only its need and desire, without the wisdom of temperance. It is waking up a monster that only has impulse and has no reasoning ability. So think about that. That's why I stepped out of Facebook. And again, yes, my pictures, my images, my stuff is still there, but I'm not going to be interacting over there. If you guys want to interact with me, go to Instagram. I've been over on Instagram posting pretty pictures and stuff up there and memes and whatever. And I'm on Twitter once in a while. Mostly Twitter is just these funny little weird messages I'm asked to put out, so I do. But even Twitter, I'm not on hardly ever unless I've got something to pass through, and it's very short. But come see me on Instagram. And of course, I'm at Danielle Egnew. And again, yes, it's social media, but it's a very, very different platform for very different reasons. And we're not trying to create something with our words. We're just allowing the pictures to speak for themselves. It's really kind of lovely over there. Speaking of social media. So if you want to know how to actually contact an alien, you're going to have to watch Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. But the next podcast I get into, we're going to be talking about the quantum field, quantum entanglement, and how do we build this incredible world on the outside since the virtual one that is now affecting the real one is caving in on itself. How do we do that? But until then, go amaze yourself with your capabilities. Okay, everybody, chew on that. I love you, and I will see you next podcast.